This is the Wall Street Shuffle.
Sorry.
Oh, I love that. Shane goes, are you ready? Well, not really. Give me a second there. Good to have you guys back on the Wall Street Shuffle. Thank you very much. 877-326-3255. Tomorrow we'll be having people calling in from China and Japan. Just to let you know that I have not been fibbing to you, people do listen to us all over the world, and we certainly appreciate the calls that we get in from our friends in Maine now. We're working our way around the 50 states. Not bad. Hey, great to have you guys back. On the line with us now is Jon Winsett. He is CEO of NPI Financial. And NPI Financial is, well, I don't want to do an ad for you, but you are you guys specialize, I guess, in performance business strategies. And does it have to do with transportation? Tell me more about your company.
We are a spend management firm. We work with the Fortune 500 to ensure that they pay the very best pricing that they can on technology, telecom, transportation, shipping. And so we do that just by, we're the Kelley Blue Book, so to speak, of corporate buying, of purchases, of renewals. And so we track pricing data across all those spend categories.
So before we get into our discussion today, since you're so close to transportation and transportation is so close to a leading indicator in our economy, are you seeing pickups in purchasing, in fleet renewal, in, let's just say, everything related to the supply chain?
Yeah, well, we're seeing that our clients are shipping a lot more over this past, let's say, 3 months than the previous 9 months. And I think that's a good sign. And Federal Express actually came out with some optimistic earnings over the last few days. So, I think, from a perspective of the amount and volume of shipping, I think it's an uptick. One other aspect that I'll mention is ocean freight. The container ships that come over from overseas, the capacity on those ships have been dwindling, and it is, the prices have slowly been rising, and there's really no flexibility because of the capacity.
Now, do we have two-way shipments? Do we have exports as well as imports?
There are, but we're an import country.
And that everything is so positive and everything you said right until you get to that point. Yes, shipping is up. Yes, we're moving things around. Yes, people might be consuming more, but we still have production issues. We still are having a hard time getting our products to go across the ocean to them as opposed to bringing things into us.
Yep, that's for sure.
All right. Well, let's get on message today. Let's talk a little bit about the military's budget. I want to talk about this and the military being out of control. You are I guess I could call you an efficiency.
Logistics.
A logistics person, yeah, exactly. You understand efficiency. The military is out of control. The budget's out of control. And just as a quick aside, a group that I belong to was just challenged about 3 days ago to come up with solutions from the private sector solutions for government overspending. And they said, presume that you know nothing about the military. Where would you first start to look to cut military expenses? And that ties in perfectly with our interview today. So I got to ask you, where would you start to cut the expenses in the military?
Well, the first thing you have to realize is, if you look at government agencies, if you look at branches of the military, they run on the same infrastructure that corporate America runs on. So they use the same applications, they use the same servers, the same carriers. The U.S. Navy is a huge user of UPS's services for shipping. It's the Iraqi and Afghanistan war is a large, maybe the largest logistical exercise ever undertaken.
Amazing, isn't it?
It really is, and the military uses commercial carriers just like corporate America uses them, and so if you realize that really the military and government agencies are really just big corporations. The same ways that corporate America uses to drive efficiencies in their with their suppliers and their supply chain is the same methods that the government can use.
But here's the problem I have with the military, though. there's no profit and loss perspective. It's all a matter of expenditures. There's no profit to be made. There's no entrepreneurial bend to it. There's no incentive to spend less. The incentive is to always spend more to protect your budget.
Yeah, I mean, it's that old school rule of budgets. If you spend it, you get to keep it. And we see it everywhere. And, we've tried to work directly with the government, and, we expected the new administration would be more open to maybe discarding some of the bureaucratic ways, but it hasn't come to pass yet. But I'll tell you, we work with a lot of commercial clients, a lot of corporate America clients that are contractors to the government, and they are all about driving efficiency within their own internal spending. They'll utilize our services as much as they can for their internal, but when it starts creeping into those projects that are, governmental, federal, where there's other, where the spending is coming from the government, there is no interest at all to look at cutting spending. It's like they just shut us out.
Well, it seems to me that your most likely client in the U.S. government right now is the military, because our administration right now could really give a darn one way or another whether the military thrives or not. They're happy to see the military cut their budget any way they can so they can increase social spending. I think you'd have the greatest opportunity within the military as opposed to other aspects of our government, I would think.
Yeah, and, I mentioned the Navy, but the U.S. Army is a big user of enterprise application software. And they spend, billions in that area. And I can tell you that pricing is all over the map when it comes to software. It is in the Fortune 500 what one company pays for a software package, which can range in the millions. I mean, the multi-millions, up to 50 million. What one company pays for that package can be vastly different than what another company pays. And I can tell you, we've seen the pricing that the Army and some of the other branches pay for their enterprise software, and it's overpriced. And, here's a little secret. Most of government spending is dictated by the GSA schedule. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the General Services Administration schedule. And it was put in place years ago, and it was supposed to ensure that the government never pays a dollar more than anyone else would ever pay. It's supposed to be the very best price that vendor or carrier charges a government agency or branch, and it's supposed to be the very best price that any company can get for that service or product. The problem is vendors are very, dare I say, crafty at getting around that guideline, and they do it by creating special SKUs or product numbers that they don't sell anywhere else, but it's essentially the same product and service, but it's just a little bit different coding, which allows them to go about their free market ways within corporate America and not really fall prey to the GSA dictate.
That's exactly right. So let me ask you this. Let me go back to my question before, just to make sure I don't lose sight of this. If you were brought in by the military right this very minute, not knowing any more than you do about the military, where would you say how would you address the problem of, let's say, cutting about, and let's just take a round number, cutting about 20% off the top of the military budget, because that's the general target people are looking at right now. How would you approach just that project?
Well, the government budget is comprised of several different components. Just the infrastructure, which we've been talking about, and the logistics is just one segment of that pie. The other pie is, the weapons and the salaries and all that kind of stuff. For me and for our company, we would focus solely on that infrastructure, that logistics segment. And so it'd be technology, it'd be telecom, communications, and it would be shipping. And we would come in and we would, take inventory of where they're buying all this gear. We have models that allow very quick inventory of where this spending is happening. And then we would benchmark their pricing immediately, real time, on what the market is for each of those items. And then we'd come back with a roadmap on how exactly they are faring. I'm sure they're not paying, $450 hammers, across the board. They're probably in line in some of those instances. But in I would imagine, based on what we've seen from our experience, there's a vast majority that they are very overpriced on, and those are where we get to work.
What's your opinion about? Well, let me ask you this: still there? There we go. You still there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. What's your opinion on offshoring to the extent that we're doing it right now, where my humble opinion is critical components are being manufactured by friendly nations, but they're still other nations. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Meaning that some of the manufacturing is happening in maybe not so friendly nations?
Well, or nations like, let's be honest, like China, that at best are a potential partner to the extent that they need to be, but they certainly do not have the U.S.'s best interest at heart many years down the road. Neither does really any other country have the interest in seeing us continue to be the best country in the world. There are plenty of people who want to see us fail. I don't understand why we offshore as much as we do.
Well, it's a big problem. It's a big problem, and there's conspiracy theorists out there that have speculated that nations such as China might build in some kind of obsolescence into their products that might fail at a certain point in time. I'm not going that far, but what I do think is important, and because corporate America does it, is build a vendor risk profile, do a supplier risk assessment, and that is let's categorize each of the suppliers. Let's rate them on the risk that they provide on a myriad of aspects, and one of them being how friendly are they to the long-term interests of the United States.
Yeah, and the bad part is when you start talking about cost-cutting in the military, as good as it sounds, part of the reason the military expenditures are as high as they are because there are security risks built into the pricing structure. And you can't always just buy the cheapest component because it's the cheapest component. And you go to a hearing, somebody goes, well, it's a $200 hammer. Well, you don't necessarily know what the specifications for the hammer were. You don't know who could make it. You don't know who the alternatives were. So you've got to rely upon the integrity of the military. And there's another problem because you've got to rely upon the integrity of people that don't really have a P&L, a private sector nature built into them.
Well, you don't want to build a military based on the lowest price provider. I mean, that's not what it's about. It's about choosing what technology or what service is best for the military and make sure you're getting that at the best price.
I want the lowest price provider for prisons. I want the lowest price provider for – I mean, I can think of a lot of things where a low-cost provider is just fine with me. The military is not one of those.
That's right. That's right.
All right, hey, John, I want to tell you very much how much we appreciated you being on, folks. Let me tell everybody where you can read more about Jon Winsett and NPI. You can find them at npifinancial.com. And I find this fascinating because, John, it sounds to me like you and I might have crossed paths in the back. I need to chat with you after the show and run by some of the questions that I'm working on right now. Maybe you can help me think through some of these things.
We'd love to be a part of it.
Well, we appreciate it very much. Great conversation, and I think you're right on target. I wish there were more people like you that were reaching out and helping the military to cut their budget as opposed to bureaucrats cutting the budget right now. So good to have you on, John.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, take care. Folks, we'll have one more segment, 877-326-3.